Imagine living through the worst day of your life, over and over, and every single time you try to fix it, you somehow make it worse. That's the trap at the center of Triangle, a psychological horror movie that messes with your head in ways you won't fully understand until the credits roll. This is a movie about a woman named Jess, a boat trip that goes horribly wrong, and a mysterious ocean liner that seems to be waiting just for her. By the end of this video, you'll understand why so many people say they had to watch this one twice just to wrap their heads around it. Fair warning, this is a loop story, so things are going to start feeling repetitive on purpose. That's the whole point. Let's dive in. We meet Jess in the middle of comforting her young son after what seems like a bad dream, trying to reassure him that none of it was real. Right after that quiet moment, she's rushing to get ready because she can't afford to be late for something. It's a small domestic scene, but there's tension under the surface right from the start. We quickly learn a few key details about Jess's life. She works as a waitress at a diner, and she's raising her son alone. Her son has special needs, and he attends a school specifically for that, which becomes an important detail later on. Before we know it, Jess is headed to the harbor, because today she's going sailing with a friend. Jess boards a yacht called the Triangle, owned by a guy named Greg. Waiting there are Greg's friends Downey and Sally, a married couple who've known Greg since childhood, and a younger guy named Victor, who we find out is currently living with Greg after Greg found him sleeping rough near the harbor. Sally has also brought along a woman named Heather, clearly hoping to set her up with Greg, something Greg makes pretty clear he didn't ask for. It's an awkward, slightly funny moment, but it also tells us these are people with a real history together, comfortable enough to tease and needle each other. In a quieter moment between Jess and Greg, we learn there's clearly something more between them than just friendship, even if neither of them says it outright. Jess admits she's been feeling off, mentioning a bad dream she can't quite remember, and Greg reassures her before the group heads out to sea. Once they're out on the water, the mood is light. There's steering lessons, teasing about sunbathing, and Sally gossiping to Heather about Jess, mentioning she's a waitress raising a son with special needs on her own. It all feels like a normal day out with friends. Then, without warning, the wind completely dies, not slows down, just stops, and everyone on board immediately senses something is deeply wrong. Greg radios the Coast Guard, describing the sudden calm and a strange storm forming out of nowhere, and that's when things take a horrifying turn. The Coast Guard picks up a separate, frantic distress call, a woman screaming for help, saying everyone is dead. It's clearly a woman's voice, but at this point, nobody on the yacht has made that call. Moments later, the storm slams into them for real. The storm hits hard and fast, flipping the yacht completely. In the chaos, Heather gets swept out and disappears into the water, and the rest of the group barely manages to claw their way onto the overturned hull to keep from drowning. They cling there, soaked and terrified, calling out for Heather with no response. It's a genuinely tense sequence, the kind of moment that makes you feel exactly how helpless they are, stranded in open water. Then, just when it feels like they might be stuck out there for good, they spot something enormous looming out of the mist. It's a massive ocean liner, and someone on board seems to have already noticed them. The survivors are hauled up onto the enormous liner, grateful and relieved, expecting a crew to greet them. Instead, they find absolutely nobody. The decks are empty, the halls are silent, and there's no sign of a single crew member anywhere. Jess starts acting strange almost immediately. She insists she recognizes the corridors, even though that makes no logical sense. Greg brushes it off, saying ocean liners tend to look alike, but Jess isn't convinced, and it's clear she's rattled by something deeper than just shock. They find a plaque revealing the ship's name, the Aeolus, and a note about the old Greek myth behind it, tying the name to the god of the winds and his son, who was punished for cheating death by being forced to push a boulder up a hill forever, never actually finishing the task. It's a detail that quietly hints at exactly what kind of story this is about to become. While exploring, the group stumbles onto a set of keys lying on the ground, and Jess is stunned to recognize them as her own house keys and car keys. There's no way they should be there, since she had her own keys with her this whole time. The group assumes it must be Heather's doing. Maybe she somehow made it onto the ship ahead of them. But that theory falls apart fast because it doesn't explain how Jess's own keys ended up on the floor of a ship she's never set foot on before today. It's a small moment, but it plants a seed of dread. Something about this ship isn't just abandoned, it's connected to Jess in a way nobody can explain yet. As they search for the ship's crew or a working radio, they start finding blood. First small traces, then unmistakable pools of it. Greg tries to rationalize it away, suggesting maybe the crew is just messing with them, but Jess isn't buying that explanation for a second. The group splits up to cover more ground, and that decision turns deadly fast. Victor is found badly hurt, Greg turns up dead, and in the panic and confusion, Sally ends up shooting Downey, believing she's defending herself from a threat. Nobody fully understands what's happening or who's really responsible. Accusations start flying immediately. Sally, grieving and terrified, turns on Jess, convinced she's somehow behind the violence. It's chaos, it's loud, and it's the first real sign that this ship is going to turn these friends against each other. In the middle of all this horror, Jess starts encountering a mysterious, masked figure on board who won't show her face. This figure delivers a chilling message. She tells Jess that the others will keep returning and that killing them is somehow the only way to actually get home. Jess is horrified by this idea, but the figure keeps repeating it like it's an unshakable rule of this place rather than a suggestion. It's honestly one of the creepiest stretches of the whole movie because we don't yet understand who this masked woman actually is or why she seems to know exactly what's coming. This is where the story stops being a simple survival thriller and starts revealing itself as something much stranger, a loop that Jess appears to be trapped inside, forced to relive the same nightmare with just enough changing each time to make her question her own sanity. From here, the movie starts folding back on itself. We see the same beats replay. Boarding the ship, the déjà vu in the corridors, the Iola's myth explanation, finding the keys, all happening again but with small differences each time, and with Jess clearly more desperate and unstable with every repetition. She starts running into other versions of herself and her friends mid-loop, at different points in their own version of this same terrible day. It becomes horrifyingly clear that Jess isn't just imagining things, she's actually colliding with earlier or later iterations of this exact same nightmare, all happening at once on this ship. Each time through, more of the group ends up dead, and each time, Jess becomes more convinced that violence is the only way to break the cycle and finally get back to shore and back to her son. In between the chaos on the ship, the movie cuts back to Jess's home life, and this is where things get genuinely upsetting. We see her losing her temper with her son over something small, yelling at him in frustration, clearly at the end of her rope from the daily pressure of raising him alone. Then, something happens at home involving a bird and blood, and the moment shifts into something far darker and more final. A mysterious driver appears afterward, calmly telling Jess there's nothing anyone can do to bring the boy back, before offering to drive her to the harbor. The movie never spells out every single detail here, but it strongly suggests that whatever happened to her son that morning is the real wound underneath everything happening on the ship, and that this entire looping nightmare is somehow tied directly to that loss and to Jess's guilt over it. As the story pushes toward its end, Jess becomes convinced that the only way to stop the cycle is to control every version of the day herself, even if that means turning against the people she once called friends. The lines between victim and threat blur completely because at different points, Jess is both the one being hunted and the one doing the hunting. The movie closes by circling all the way back to the very beginning. The same morning, the same rush to get ready, the same boat, the same friends greeting her at the harbor, as if none of what we just watched actually changed anything at all. It's a gut punch of an ending, because it strongly implies Jess is locked into this exact same day forever, unable to escape no matter what she tries. That final callback to the Aeolus myth suddenly makes total sense. Just like the figure condemned to push that boulder up the hill for eternity, Jess seems doomed to sail out, board that ship, and lose everyone all over again, endlessly. What makes Triangle so unsettling isn't really the ship or even the violence, it's the idea of being trapped by your own worst moment, forced to relive it no matter how hard you fight to change the outcome. Every version of Jess we see is still trying to save the people around her, and still failing, because the trap was never really about the ship at all. The movie leaves you sitting with some genuinely uncomfortable questions about guilt, grief, and whether some mistakes are simply impossible to outrun. No matter how many times you get a second chance, it doesn't hand you a clean answer, and honestly, that's exactly why people are still talking about this ending. If a story like this stays with you long after it ends, that's usually a sign it did exactly what it set out to do.